We're just the front line. We are the ones who manage the resources to feed the people. So the people who we all eat. So I mean, if I wasn't farming, I'd even be more upset because at least now I can kind of feed myself. But if I was living in the city, I depend on someone else. So we want to make sure that the people who are feeding us, regardless if it's agriculture, forestry, or fishing, like in forestry with the products, is that they're given the right tools and that they can do it sustainably into the future. Because I'm selfish, I want to eat, sort of thing. And you're getting foreign investment even in places now too. So that's a scary thing. The part that they had it easier in the late 1800s. The British government, I think it was 1767 is when they came and drew the lots for PEI and gave it to all their friends or whatever, and then it was given out. So the thing is, all the people were basically rural there, so they had the numbers now. Then today, farmers only represent 1.6% of the population. So any struggle we have is just that much harder because of the numbers alone. Instead of 30 or 40 or 50, 60% living in the rural area making their living. So it's hard, and I mean, everyone's busy and everyone's got stuff important going on. So it's hard to know where the priorities must be and stuff like that. But I mean, if we lose our food, the right to grow our own food and to have food security, that's a scary issue. And people just have to look at other poor countries like countries in Africa or other places where things had gone really bad. So we're so lucky to have what we have. Usually what happens, we become indifferent, and then before you know it, you lose what you had. It's much easier to maintain it and to keep it vibrant than to lose it and try to get it back.
So you've got chickens here. So why do you have chickens here?
Just I love animals, and the thing is they're raised more humanely and no chemicals, no nothing like that, and they're much tastier. And I raise them a little bit bigger too.
But there's been a problem with abattoirs. What's that done to the communities?
Well,
raise animals and then use them for personal consumption, or
kind of what's been going on. Like I say, years and years ago, everyone did it in the community. Your neighbor came and he helped them. Like the older gentleman across there would come across and he'd help my grandfather, slaughter a pig, and he'd get a little bit, a portion of the meat for helping him and stuff. And they did that with the woods and killing, beef and all that kind of stuff. But what happened is then the rural people moved away from. Into the cities and stuff. There wasn't the labor that you could make use of, and then everything got bigger and supposedly better. And then what happened was now you got 8 or 10 years ago we lost our major pig killing plant in Charlottetown, so that basically devastated. There used to be about 400 full-time pork producers. Now there's like 6. There's a bunch of people like me that have a couple, but if you don't have the infrastructure, the economy, the scale and stuff, everything now, you have to turn over such numbers to make the few pennies you do. So it's all about numbers and send them to wherever. But if what happens is when you get bigger and like that and you lose the infrastructure, none of the big plants want to see 10 chickens coming in or 20 chickens or 1 pig sort of thing. It's they're in the hundreds and thousands sort of thing. So. And ordinary consumers, all consumers in Canada, should really be worried, because I was saying to you earlier, not too long ago there was 20 little butchers on PEI. Now I think there's 5. Plus we have the bigger plant up in Borden, Carleton. But when the 4 or 5 go, they're not going to be taken over because of regulations and such. So we're ordinary little hobby farmers or niche market, or they're going to be lost. So it should be, the consumer at large should be really concerned about our losing the ability to have food security. The brown guy's Leroy, and the white fella is Little Eddie. So it's kind of nice to have them, to have your own pork. Once again, it's like the chickens. You know what you're feeding them. Once again, it's part of the farm. When people got specialized, it doesn't matter if it's farming, fishing, whatever. You can't. What word would I put? When you're specialized, it's all about the numbers, like I was saying earlier. So. What happens is there's nothing you can do to make use of other things. For example, if I was producing thousands of pigs, you wouldn't be able to make use of outside. And this here, they eat all the stuff that doesn't get eaten in the garden, and grain. Your costs are a lot less for raising them, and they're a lot healthier and happier.
What are the names again?
The brown guy is Leroy, and his brother there is Little Eddie. So I'll keep one for myself, and then if someone wanted to buy one or something, then we could. But I think it's all about you know, in life, it's like if you can have more to, like, I feel bad for the people in the city because they do one thing and anything else in their life is either bought or done by someone else, or there's no connective anything else. Whereas here, you know, whatever the cows wouldn't eat or what we don't eat, the pigs can eat. It's much more, well, actually efficient that way, and there's not near as much waste or anything like that. And I mean, like, there's apple trees here and there's pear trees there and more pear trees. You know, and the corn stalks, when we take the house corn off, they'll eat the stalks and all that. So nothing goes to waste when you have, you know, the cattle and the pigs and the chickens, and then you compost other things. So that you try to make it a system. I know you can't be 100% efficient or independent, but I mean, there's a lot of things that we can do. So this is just another opportunity, because I like pork. So instead of buying it, I might as well have, like, they're really characters to watch, and there's a better feeling. There's something about doing stuff yourself, and there's a connection. And I think when you have your own animals, you respect the life of them, and you try to give them a good life when they're here. And you know, these guys, as you can see, they're rooting, and then they win the little thing there when it gets hot, and then at night they can decide where their comfort zone is. Whereas, you know, like with some of the big factory farms or whatever, the animals are there. It doesn't matter if they, you know, that's what it is, and that's just all it is to it, sort of thing.
So, Stephen, what generation are you here now?
I'm seventh generation. We've been, like, on the MacKinnon side, we've been here since 1808. And the land issue is a fairly sensitive thing to me, because not only am I connected to this place, but when my ancestors first came, like in 1808, they had to lease their land for 999 years. And actually, I have one copy of an 1820 lease agreement. So there was, like, we're almost fighting now the same fight that they fought, you know, back in the early late 1700s, was that absentee landlords, and you know, that, like, my philosophy is, it doesn't matter if you're forestry, fishing, farming, or whatever. The people who live in a given area or a given community are the ones that should have the rights to sustainably make use of those resources, not some faceless corporation from wherever. And it's like technology. It should fit us, we shouldn't fit it. So corporations, sure, they have to make money, but they have to do it on our terms, not their terms.
If you imagine PEI 10, 25 years from now.
Well, a lot of people think the way I'd look at it, they think we'd be going back in time. But what I'd like to see is, PEI was like, you know, with the shipbuilding and the lumber, you know, like, we used to be an exporter years ago too. I'd like to see us go back to more, I don't know what you want to say. I think the multinational corporations have to know where their place is, and the thing is, as I say, there's a place for them, but they don't dictate. Shouldn't be allowed to dictate the conditions or the terms. So what I would like to see is PEI, because we're the smallest province in Canada. Like, there's a lot of things going for us. We can, you know, we got anywhere from 9 miles to 25 miles of isolation here that we can probably do different things with crops, like for development. But I would like to see us go back to, because I remember asking when we were putting in the windmill, roughly how much does it cost for PEI homes and businesses to heat their homes and stuff. And the figure they kind of gave me was $200 to $300 million a year. So that $200 or $300 million a year for oil was leaving PEI. So this is what I was saying, if with the windmills and solar panels, and even with the wood, if we could have wood boilers maybe, and pay people who have wood lots to sustainably manage them, and be able to sell the lower quality wood to run the boilers or whatever for generators. I think what I'd like to do is, every time we make a decision on, like, for the leaders of PEI and even the people, that every time we make a decision, regardless what it is if it's in our community or with our money, what we buy with it, is how it will it improve PEI down the road, or is it putting money off island that we won't be able to kind of be able to use it for our own uses. And I kind of think this is where the one other day I was talking to people, up till 1980 there was tons of mom and pop type size shoe stores, garages, clothing stores, everything. There was no real big box stores type thing. And then what happened after the free trade agreement, which allowed multinationals, they didn't have the red tape in order to go anywhere in the world to get the cheapest resources, and then send it to have the cheapest labor, process it, and then send it to the highest markets. When that happened, that devastated the local, I'd say throughout Canada and different parts of the world, but it destroyed a lot of PEI, because all the people that were small business people couldn't compete, because they were too small a size to make use of the international trades. So what's happening now is that because there is no competition for the multinationals or the big box stores, they're making huge profits. And now, like I was saying earlier, with the sawmill or the windmills or the microbreweries or the smaller technologies, there's enough profit now that they're making. We can turn around and start doing more community-based stuff, and then keep, like, every time we have to think is how can we keep that money here in PEI so it can keep circulating, because as soon as it goes off island, it's awful hard to get it back. And what I'd like to see PEI, I'd love to see, because a lot of these big farmers, they're doing the best that they think they can and everything, but when their time is to retire or whatever, they're too big for anyone else to buy or take over. So in one way, we may have to revert back to some more small land holdings and more diversified, because I mean it's only in the last few years that we're worried about the nitrates. Now it's the water thing, and then we got health concerns with air with pesticides or anything else. So I don't. The big part about the big farming or factory farming was they were making use of cheap energy and cheap, like reasonably cheap equipment. But now all that stuff's starting to change. Like, you got the higher price of oil, you got even the idea of should we even be burning in a lot of cases, and the cost of all these technologies is so high compared to what it used to be years ago. So I think that was a run that we gave it a kick at the can and it didn't really work out. I think we have to start using our imagination and basically question every time government makes a decision when they spend money or when they set up anything, is how does that affect PEI as a whole, and especially the rural area, because basically any other than a city only exists on itself. Like, a city doesn't exist on its own. It only exists in a given area if it can bring inputs to refine or develop or manufacture and send out. It's the countryside that feeds the city units and stuff like that. So I mean, if you let them go by the wayside, the cities will die too. But I mean, you can have it, like, what's happened too is out here, and even here, like there was a lot of 50 and 70 acre farms. Now, where there should have been 20 or 30 farms here, maybe where there was 80 years ago, there's 3 or 4 of us left. The sad part is, if we let it go to much farther down the road, the wrong road, we're going to lose a lot of culture in the agriculture, like a lot of the know-how, because a lot of the farming today is done through what the specialist tells, like the feed companies, the fertilizer companies, or whatever, the drug companies, whatever. The old days, it was your grandfather and your father that told you how to grow the good crops, and they knew every step of the every acre of their land, so they knew what everything was required. And I mean, if people think it didn't, well, it did, because I mean they survived. Now we have debt. I think the debt in Canada, if I'm not mistaken, 2011 was 62 billion Canada wide. 3 years later, 78 billion. 22% increase in 3 years, and that's what we consider efficient or better. We're going to be extinct. So before it's too late, I think we have to start turning things around. And I think now the consumers are kind of starting to see it. See, the box store, the big box stores or the multinationals, you have to give them credit. They did an unreal job of making it easy and convenient for us to go and buy their products or whatever, right? For example, you can go to Walmart and the commercial says, as the woman working at the drug counter says, while we're filling your prescription, go and do your shopping. So a lot of us have given up. Like, they've made it really convenient, but there's a cost that comes with that convenience. So I think now, for ordinary consumers, what they have to start saying is, well, I might have to plan my trip home that I swing by a certain place so I can support a local farmer or a fisherman or a forestry person. And the thing is, they might think that's a burden, but actually the fun part about it is you start reconnecting with the people in your area. When I start doing other things outside the community, like that's what community is about, is the interaction of people. And what happened was we didn't have community, and that's where we were headed if this doesn't change. Like, the new trade agreement with the Pacific Rim countries, again, is going to make it that much harder for young people to get in again. So PEI, for example, there's room for a few, like market gardener type thing, but there's never enough. That's a niche market kind of thing, but you get the land grabs out west, and with the new trade agreements, it's going to be more and more corporate control for the 98% of the food grown in Canada. So the question is, people are asking for it, young farmers and farmers are asking for it, but that 74% going out, most of it's probably going to be taken over by corporate control for the most part. So what we need to go this way, they're still going even harder and stronger this way. Like, when they gave an extra 4,000 tons to CETA, for example, when they only asked for 14,000 tons, we gave them 18,000.
Well, what I wonder about is who's going to be producing that in 10 years, right? Young farmers can't get into that kind of farming. There are no young farmers going into export-oriented agriculture. Even producing field crops is pretty rare, according to what we found.
But with the corporate control, what they seem to be moving to too is the infrastructure. They're kind of basing it, like, you know, they'll have some type of market, like certain kind of pork or whatever. And if you don't produce it the certain ways that they recommend, you're not going to be able to even ship through into their slaughterhouses or their processing things. So step by step, they're actually making it harder and harder all the time.
Yeah.
So I think we have to ask politicians to do what's right, but I think we have to even be more imaginary and do it amongst ourselves. Because I mean, even here, like I think we used to, a few years ago, we had 20 small butchers, now we have 5. And if those 5 go, we're screwed. Because, you know, if you have a pig you want done, right, I don't even know what you're going to do. And you might be able to do it for yourself, but you're never going to market it because of the regulations and stuff. So I think we have to start doing things another way too, because there'd be no problem having enough young farmers go from 1.6 up to about 20 or 30% again. But the way the policies are going, it's going to be hard to even keep the 1.6.
Oh, yeah.
I have a windmill, I have a sawmill, I have wood winches, and I can do all kinds of things. So the technology's there now on the smaller scales, that the only thing we need now is the people to consciously be aware of what they're supporting and not supporting. So we get people supporting, like even you were saying about the chickens. Well, all we have to do is get these people to say, I'm not willing to buy chickens that come from God only knows where. We're going to buy your chickens, you know, that are done up in a little plant, or even if you do them yourself. So I think they don't allow us to know that how much power we have. We can change. It's knowing where your people came from, and the struggles they had in clearing the land, and the struggles they had, my people in Scotland, when Britain took over and you know, evicted them and that. So we are so lucky and so fortunate when you go out here and look at the green stuff and the buildings and the animals and the machine I have, because some of my ancestors at one time lost all they had and had to struggle to come here to make a new life. So, you know, they cleared all the land that. So all I basically have to do is maintain things, and sometimes we even whine about that. So I think it's in order for anyone to be content or at peace with themselves, they have to have a feeling of belonging.